The year is 3547, and the galaxy stands on the precipice of a new age, a fragile peace after centuries of bloodshed. Humanity, once teetering on the edge of extinction, has flourished, spreading across the stars. The Warborn lords, humanity's elite defenders, once feared and revered, have faded into legend. The Vanguard, their genetically engineered warriors, once the galaxy's most formidable force, now lie dormant in cryogenic chambers, awaiting a call to arms that seems unlikely to come. That is, until the signal arrives. It's an anomaly, an old fragmented distress signal from the deep reaches of space, originating from a system once thought abandoned. The message is barely audible, corrupted by time and distance, but the coordinates it bears point to a forgotten frontier world, an outpost humanity had abandoned long ago. The Warborn lords have long since lost track of these relics, remnants of the old war against the alien threats that once tore the galaxy apart. Yet the signal is unmistakable, and within it lies a chilling implication. The galaxy may not be as safe as humanity had believed. Commander Asher Kane, one of the oldest and most battle-hardened of the Vanguard, stirs from his cryogenic sleep. His body, preserved in a suspended state for over a century, is miraculously unscathed. He awakens in the sterile silence of the cryo chamber, his mind sharp but disoriented. The years of slumber have left him with a sense of disconnection, but his instincts kick in, training, reflexes, and the deep-set loyalty to humanity's survival. The cold, artificial lights of the cryo chamber flicker to life, and the metallic scent of the room fills his lungs. His first movement is a stretch, the motion fluid despite his extended rest. The Vanguard were engineered for resilience, for war, and that design has kept him alive through decades of stasis. Asher's mind races with questions. Why has he been reawakened? What force is so dire it calls for his return? His first step is to the control terminal. Asher, aided by his enhancements, quickly assesses the data. The signal is more than just a distress call. It's a trap, an invitation of sorts. The coordinates lead to a distant planet known as Atria 9, a world once teeming with life, now a barren wasteland. Yet the signal points to a hidden colony, a place humanity abandoned long ago due to an unknown alien threat. His heart tightens as he processes the information. A trap, yes, but not a random one. Whoever or whatever is behind it knows about the Vanguard, about the Warborn lords. Whoever they are, they know the dangers humanity faces. The thought that the galaxy could still hold threats of such power sends a chill through him. Wake them, Asher orders, his voice strong, authoritative, and calm. The Vanguard must be reassembled. They must fight once more. With the cryo chamber doors opening with a hiss, Asher steps into a world both familiar and alien. The technology of the Vanguard's era is advanced, but it feels like a relic, like something from another age. He feels out of place, as if he no longer belongs in this galaxy, yet his purpose remains clear: protect humanity at all costs. He reaches the command deck, where several of his comrades are stored in cryogenic stasis pods, waiting for the moment they will be called to fight once more. His hand hovers over the activation console, and a deep breath fills his chest. He touches the panel, sending a pulse through the system, awakening the others. First to rise is Captain Maralokan, a sharp-witted strategist with a mind as dangerous as her combat skills. Her eyes snap open, filled with the same steely determination Asher knows so well. "You've come for us," she says, her voice still heavy with the effects of stasis. "We're needed," Asher replies, his voice cold but resolute. "Prepare yourself." The Vanguard are awake. Together, they stand as the last line of defense, a force unmatched by anything the galaxy has seen. But even as Asher looks out over the stars from the command deck, a nagging doubt lingers in his mind. Who would summon the Vanguard back from the ashes of war? And why now after so long? Their first mission will soon reveal the truth, and with it, the horrors lurking in the shadows of the galaxy. The Vanguard gathered aboard their flagship, the Vigilance, an imposing warship designed for one purpose: to fight and win against impossible odds. The darkened hull of the ship hummed with power, its engines resonating through the decks as it glided through space toward the coordinates provided by the mysterious signal. Asher Kane stood at the command bridge, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the galaxy. Each blinking light represented a colony, a star system, a life. The one blinking near Atria 9 caught his attention. The source of the signal. The planet was a forgotten relic, a silent witness to humanity's past wars. Set course for Atria 9. Asher ordered, his voice steady, betraying none of the unease that clawed at him. The crew immediately obeyed, and the ship's engines roared as they engaged warp. Aboard the Vigilance, the Vanguard prepared for their first battle in over a century. Mara Loken moved through the corridors like a ghost, her movements efficient and precise, as if she'd never left the battlefield. Her sharp eyes never missed a detail, and she exchanged brief, clipped words with the other Vanguard warriors as they readied their equipment. For all their enhanced abilities, they had no illusions. The universe had changed during their long slumber. New enemies had risen, and some old ones might have returned. Asher stood before his team, his expression unreadable. He could feel the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him. He had led the Vanguard before, but this was different. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight to reclaim their place in a galaxy that had moved on without them. But they were still warriors, and that alone made them humanity's greatest hope. "All systems are go, Commander," said Darian, a Vanguard tech specialist who had been monitoring the ship's systems. "Prepare for atmospheric entry," Asher ordered. The Vigilance dropped out of warp, its engines thrumming as it decelerated toward Atria 9's atmosphere. Below, a dark shadow loomed, the ruins of a once thriving colony now reduced to smoldering craters. The world was unrecognizable, a barren wasteland, the remains of old structures scattered across the surface, half buried by sand and ash. The atmosphere was thick, the air heavy with the remnants of something toxic. "This isn't right," Mara muttered, her voice laced with unease. "We knew the world was abandoned, but this is worse than expected." "We'll know more once we land," Asher said. His eyes narrowed as he surveyed the horizon. "Prepare for combat. Stay alert." The drop to the surface was fast and brutal. As the Vigilance descended through the thick, toxic clouds, the ship rocked under the impact of enemy fire. Asher's hand gripped the console, but his focus never wavered. From the planet's surface, something had opened fire, targeting their ship with pinpoint accuracy. "Enemy contact. Unknown origin," Darian yelled over the comms. "Deploy immediately," Asher barked. The drop pods launched, and in a blur of motion, the Vanguard were plunged into the planet's atmosphere, their pods crashing onto the surface with thunderous force. As they emerged, the Vanguard were greeted by a hellish landscape, a twisted nightmare of shattered buildings and scattered corpses. But it was the silence that made Asher's gut twist. There were no signs of life, no survivors. Yet the signal was clear. Someone, or something, had called them here. "Stay sharp," Asher commanded, his voice low, carrying the weight of experience. "We're not alone." The Vanguard moved through the ruins, their weapons drawn, scanning every corner, every shadow. The ground trembled beneath their feet, a subtle warning that something massive was moving beneath the surface. Then, without warning, the ground erupted. A swarm of insectoid creatures, massive, grotesque, and fast, burst from the earth, attacking with a ferocity that took even the Vanguard by surprise. Their bodies were like armor-plated exoskeletons, their mandibles clicking as they charged. The creatures seemed to appear from nowhere, as though the very ground had opened up to unleash them. "Engage," Asher roared. The Vanguard reacted instantly, their enhanced reflexes kicking in. Mara moved like a blur, her energy blades flashing as she cut through the alien hordes. Darian unleashed a hail of fire, his gun spitting deadly rounds. But the enemy was relentless, emerging from cracks in the ground, swarming over them with mindless determination. Asher fought with brutal precision, his combat training taking over as he sliced through the alien mass, his movements fluid despite the years of dormancy. But even the Vanguard were stunned by the sheer numbers and ferocity of the attackers. They were up against something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The battle raged on, and just as it seemed the Vanguard might be overwhelmed, the creatures retreated, disappearing into the earth as quickly as they had emerged. But the damage was done. The Vanguard were left panting, covered in the dark ichor of their fallen enemies. Asher surveyed the battlefield, his eyes hard with resolve. "This is just the beginning," he muttered. "We've been lured into something far worse than we imagined." The signal wasn't just a call for help. It was a warning. The Vanguard had returned to fight. But now, they were not just defending humanity. They were fighting for their very survival. The Vanguard stood amidst the carnage, the eerie silence settling in like a heavy fog. The battlefield, littered with the dead bodies of the insectoid creatures, was a testament to their struggle. The air was thick with the stench of burnt flesh and alien ichor. Asher stood at the forefront, his gaze unwavering as he scanned the horizon. The sudden retreat of the creatures was puzzling, almost as if they had lured the Vanguard into a trap. And now they were waiting, watching from the shadows. "Regroup," Asher ordered, his voice low and authoritative. "Form up." Mara Loken, her energy blade still humming with the residual heat of battle, walked over to Asher. Her face was pale, but her eyes gleamed with determination. "They're gone for now," she said, her tone cautious. "But I don't like the way they withdrew. That wasn't a typical retreat. It was strategic. They want us to follow them." "Then we'll oblige," Asher replied, his hand tightening around the hilt of his energy blade. "Let's get answers." The Vanguard moved quickly through the ruined cityscape, their boots crunching against the debris. As they advanced, they stumbled upon something unexpected. A hidden facility buried deep beneath the surface. It was ancient, the technology far more advanced than anything they had seen before. The walls hummed with dormant energy, and the air was thick with a strange resonance. Asher signaled to his team, and they moved inside. The facility's corridors were dimly lit, the walls lined with strange symbols and alien writings that none of the Vanguard recognized. But what struck Asher the most was the sense of familiarity, a chilling, nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach. This place, though alien, felt almost human. He couldn't shake the suspicion that they weren't the first ones to have found this place. That perhaps, in some twisted way, humanity had been here before. Inside, the Vanguard discovered a series of stasis pods, not unlike the ones they had been awakened from. But these were different, older, more decrepit. Asher's eyes narrowed as he approached the closest pod. Inside, the form of a figure lay suspended in stasis, its features obscured by the frosted glass. "Another survivor?" Mara asked, her voice tense. Asher didn't answer immediately. He stared at the pod, his mind racing. The figures inside didn't match any human physiology. In fact, they bore a striking resemblance to the insectoid creatures they had just fought. But the longer Asher looked, the more he felt the unease crawl up his spine. Something wasn't right. These were no ordinary aliens. There was a deeper connection between them and humanity than he could comprehend. "We need to get these systems online," he said, his voice cold. "We're missing something here, something important." Darian moved quickly to the central console, his fingers flying over the ancient controls. The hum of machinery filled the air as the console sparked to life. A series of holographic projections appeared, depicting the history of the facility. Asher's eyes widened as he pieced together the fragments of the story. It was a secret project, an experiment, one that had been hidden from the rest of humanity for centuries. The facility had been built during the early days of the war with the alien species, but it was never completed. The experiments, it seemed, were meant to create a new breed of soldier, one that could bridge the gap between humanity and the alien species they were fighting. They had tried to genetically combine human DNA with the alien biology, creating a hybrid race. Stronger, faster, more adaptable. But something had gone terribly wrong. The hybrids had turned on their creators, and the facility had been sealed off, forgotten by time. Asher's hand tightened around his blade. "This isn't just a trap," he muttered, his voice filled with grim realization. "This is part of something much bigger. We've been caught in the middle of a legacy, one that could destroy humanity." Mara's face hardened. But who's behind this? Who would resurrect this madness? Asher turned to her, his expression darkening. Someone who wants control. Someone who knows the power of the Warborn lords and wants to use it for their own gain. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Ilios Verek, one of the Warborn lords, had always been a powerful and ambitious leader. But could he really be behind this? Had he sought to use the alien hybrids to gain an edge, to rule over not just humanity, but the galaxy? Darian's voice broke through his thoughts. "Commander, you need to see this." On the central console, a new hologram appeared. An image of a man, one Asher had not seen in decades. Ilios Verek. His face was older now, his once youthful features hardened by years of power and influence. But his eyes, those eyes, remained the same. Cold, calculating. "By the stars," Mara whispered. "It's him." Ilios had survived, and he was far more dangerous than they had ever realized. Asher's blood ran cold. The war has just begun. The weight of Asher's words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Ilios Verek. The name was both a symbol of fear and respect among the Warborn lords. A brilliant tactician, a once revered leader, and above all, a man whose ambition knew no bounds. The sight of his face, alive and well after so many years, felt like a slap across Asher's mind. Ilios had always been the kind of leader who believed in the supremacy of the Warborn. But this was something else. The hologram flickered as Ilios' voice echoed in the chamber. "If you are seeing this message, it means you've awakened to the truth. Welcome to my legacy." The message was recorded long ago, but its presence was a reminder of just how far Ilios' reach had extended. "What legacy?" Asher muttered under his breath. The hologram continued. "When I led the Warborn, I envisioned a galaxy under humanity's dominion. But I underestimated the cost of that ambition. We were at war with more than just the alien races. There were secrets buried in the depths of our own blood. Secrets that I uncovered, and in doing so, found the key to humanity's future." The room seemed to pulse with the haunting words. Asher's thoughts were racing. He knew Ilios had always been driven by a vision of humanity's supremacy, but combining alien biology with human genetics, that went beyond ambition. It was madness. The hologram shifted, showing images of long-dead Warborn soldiers, warriors like Asher and Mara, standing side by side with strange, insectoid hybrids. The same hybrids that had attacked them on the surface. They were no longer separate species. They were one, their humanity lost to the unholy experiments that Ilios had initiated. "Asher Kane," Ilios' image said, pulling Asher back to the present. "You are the last of my warriors. I know your strength, your loyalty. You were designed to fight, to win. But you will never be enough. You can never defeat what I've created." The image of Ilios seemed to smirk, an arrogance Asher remembered all too well. "I've perfected my soldiers. They are not just hybridized. They are evolved. And soon, they will be ready to cleanse this galaxy of weakness. They will rule, and you, my dear Vanguard, will be nothing but relics of the past." The hologram flickered once more before disappearing entirely, leaving the Vanguard in a stunned silence. Mara was the first to break it. "So Ilios has been creating these things, soldiers made of both human and alien genetics. He's been playing God." Asher's jaw clenched. "It explains the creatures we faced earlier, but they're not fully ready yet. Ilios wants us to fight them, to believe we're saving the galaxy, while his real plan is much darker. He wants us to fail. And if we fail? Darian asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Then humanity loses everything, Asher said grimly. Our legacy, our future, our survival. Ilios believes only the strongest should rule, and he intends to make himself the pinnacle of that strength, by any means necessary. The weight of the mission ahead crushed down on them. What had begun as a mission to investigate a distress signal had now spiraled into something far more dangerous. Ilios had set a trap, not just for the Vanguard, but for all of humanity. His creation of hybrid soldiers was just the beginning. The real weapon, the final piece of his plan, was still hidden somewhere in the depths of Atria 9's facility. We need to find whatever he's hidden here, Asher said, his voice hard. It's the key to stopping this madness. The Vanguard moved quickly, scouring the hidden facility for any remaining clues about Ilios' plans. They made their way through darkened corridors, following the faint hum of power still running through the walls. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the air became, and the more certain Asher grew that they weren't alone. Something's not right, Mara muttered, her eyes darting across the room. It's too quiet. Suddenly, the floor trembled beneath their feet. A loud, grinding noise echoed through the halls, followed by the soft hiss of pressure locks releasing. From the shadows, a massive figure emerged, an enormous hybrid soldier, a monstrous fusion of human and alien, its eyes glowing with a predatory gleam. It was no longer a simple creature. It was a weapon, an abomination designed to hunt and kill. We need to fight our way out, Asher barked, raising his energy blade. The hybrid's mandibles clicked menacingly as it charged, its movements unnaturally fast. The Vanguard responded in kind, but Asher could see it in their eyes. They weren't just fighting for their survival anymore. They were fighting for the survival of the entire human race. The hybrid's arm shot forward like a spear, its claws slashing through the air with terrifying speed. Asher ducked, his blade cutting a clean arc through the creature's side. The hybrid staggered, but it recovered with brutal efficiency. We're not enough, Mara shouted as she engaged the creature from the other side. It's stronger than we thought. Asher's mind raced. They had no choice but to push forward, to defeat this creature and find the heart of Ilios' operation. The war with Ilios was far from over, but the true battle was just beginning. Keep moving, Asher ordered. We have to stop him before it's too late. The Vanguard were back in action, but with every step, the shadows of the past grew closer. The Vanguard fought with everything they had, their enhanced bodies pushing them to the limits as they battled the hybrid monstrosity. Asher's blade slashed through the creature's carapace, but the monster's alien resilience seemed endless. It retaliated with vicious speed, its claws raking across the walls and the floor, carving deep grooves into the metal like paper. Mara's energy blade crackled as she hacked at the beast's limbs, but for every strike they landed, the hybrid seemed to grow stronger, more ferocious. The air was thick with tension, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for humanity's future. And they were running out of time. Every second they spent battling this creature was a second closer to Ilios completing his plan. Move, Asher shouted, ducking beneath the hybrid's massive, snapping mandibles. The creature's body was a blur of motion, faster than anything they had encountered before. Mara lunged forward, her blade striking the creature in a precise, calculated arc. This time, it struck true. The hybrid's arm was severed at the shoulder, falling to the ground with a sickening thud. The beast howled in pain, its inhuman shriek echoing off the walls. But it wasn't enough to stop it. It was still coming, relentless, like a storm made of living flesh. Darian fired a volley of high-energy rounds from his blaster, hitting the creature's chest. Sparks flew, but it barely flinched. "We need a plan," he yelled, his voice tight with frustration. Asher's mind was racing. This creature was just one of many Helios had created, but they couldn't afford to waste time on endless battles. "We keep pushing forward," Asher said through gritted teeth. "We're getting to the core of this facility. That's where Helios's true weapon lies." Mara's eyes flickered with understanding. "You're right. This thing is just a distraction. He wants us to waste our resources fighting these monsters, while the real threat is still hidden." Asher turned toward the hallway ahead, his pulse quickening as he assessed the situation. "We're not playing his game. We're ending this now." With renewed determination, the Vanguard made their way past the fallen hybrid. It took everything in them to avoid the crawling, half-alive creature, but they had no choice. The facility's layout grew more complex as they moved deeper, the walls shifting into a labyrinth of chambers and high-tech systems. It was clear that Helios had built this place with one thing in mind: to contain and control whatever horrors he had unleashed. The deeper they ventured, the more ominous the atmosphere became. They passed long, dark corridors filled with suspended pods, some cracked open, others sealed tight. In one chamber, Asher glimpsed the skeletal remains of what appeared to be a failed experiment, a chilling reminder of the price of Helios's ambition. Finally, they'd reached the central chamber, an enormous spherical room at the heart of the facility. At its center, a massive structure hummed with energy, its surface slick with a strange liquid. It looked like something ancient, something forgotten by time. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating, as though the very walls were closing in on them. "This is it," Mara whispered, her voice tense. "This is where he's been hiding everything." Asher nodded. He could feel it in his bones, the presence of something far more dangerous than they had encountered yet. Whatever was in that chamber wasn't just a weapon, it was an abomination, a creation that could change the balance of the entire galaxy. Before they could approach, the room's lights flickered, and a voice echoed through the chamber, its tone cold and mocking. "Welcome, Vanguard." Helios's voice filled the space, sending a shiver down Asher's spine. "You've done well to make it this far. But I must warn you, the end is near. This is where it all begins." Suddenly, the structure at the center of the room began to pulse with dark energy, sending waves of distortion through the air. The liquid inside it bubbled and churned as if someone was awakening. "The final phase is upon us," Helios continued, his voice now laced with a sickening glee. "And you will witness it. The galaxy will tremble beneath my power. You will see the true might of the Warborn, reborn and perfected." Asher's stomach twisted. This was it. This was the weapon Helios had been preparing, a weapon capable of reshaping humanity's future, and not in a way anyone would want. The last remnants of the Warborn lords would become tools for Helios's twisted vision of domination. "We're not here to witness your madness," Asher snarled. "We're here to stop it." With a roar of defiance, the Vanguard rushed forward, weapons raised, ready to face whatever nightmare Helios had created. But as they approached the center of the chamber, the ground beneath their feet trembled once more, and the structure began to open, revealing what lay within. The creature that emerged from the depths of the chamber was beyond anything the Vanguard had ever seen. It was a grotesque fusion of human and alien, but not like the hybrids they had fought before. This thing was vast, its form towering over them, a monstrous amalgamation of every nightmare Helios had ever dreamed of. It was the culmination of his experiments, a being that could tear through anything in its path. "Meet my perfect creation." Helios's voice echoed one final time. The end of humanity's weakness. The colossal creature towered over the Vanguard, its twisted form a grotesque blend of human and alien features. It was both horrifying and awe-inspiring, a true testament to Helios's twisted vision of perfection. Asher's breath caught in his chest as he took in the sheer size of the abomination before him. The creature's skin was a sickly gray, its body covered in overlapping plates of hardened chitin, resembling a nightmarish insect, yet somehow more humanoid. Its many limbs twisted and contorted unnaturally, and its glowing insect-like eyes bore down on them with an unnerving intelligence. It stood motionless for a moment, as if studying the Vanguard, and then it let out a low, rumbling growl. The ground shook beneath their feet as it moved forward, its powerful legs thundering with every step. "Move!" Asher barked, snapping out of his stunned reverie. "Get to cover." The Vanguard scrambled for position as the creature lunged, its claws raking through the air with terrifying speed. Asher and Mara dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike, while Darian fired a barrage of high-energy rounds from his blaster. The shots hit the creature's chitinous armor with a sharp crack, but it seemed to do little more than irritate it. "That thing's not going down easily," Mara shouted, her voice tight with urgency. Asher didn't answer. His mind was already working, analyzing the creature's movements. The energy it emitted was off the charts, and the sheer size of the thing made it nearly impossible to get close enough to strike effectively. But there had to be a weak point. There had to be something they could exploit. "We need to disable it," Asher said, his voice low and focused. "Darian, keep firing. Mara, stay mobile. I'll get in close and find a way to strike." The Vanguard fell into their roles quickly. Darian continued his barrage, attempting to keep the creature's attention, while Mara danced around the monster's strikes, her energy blade flicking with deadly precision. Asher, meanwhile, kept his eyes locked on the creature's movements, looking for a pattern, a weakness. There had to be something. The creature's movements were unpredictable, its limbs swinging in erratic patterns, but Asher began to notice something. The energy it emitted had a slight rhythm, a pulse, and as it moved, the pulse seemed to grow stronger, almost as if the creature were charging up for something far worse than its already devastating attacks. "We don't have long," Asher muttered. "It's building up energy." Mara's eyes flashed. "Then we need to end it now, before it becomes even stronger." Asher nodded grimly. He had no choice. He had to get close enough to find its core. Whatever part of this monstrous abomination was the key to stopping it. He had to strike before the creature unleashed whatever terrible power it was preparing. With a sudden burst of speed, Asher darted forward, leaping over a low-hanging piece of debris as the creature swung its massive claws in his direction. He felt the wind from the strike pass by him, just inches away. He landed hard on the ground and rolled, coming up behind the creature's legs. The creature let out a shriek of anger, spinning around to face him. Asher's pulse quickened, but he didn't hesitate. He surged forward, closing the distance, and with one swift, powerful motion, he slashed at the creature's lower abdomen. The energy blade cut deep into its armored shell, sending sparks flying. But the creature didn't stagger. Instead, it responded with a savage roar, spinning around to swipe at him with its claws. Asher barely managed to duck beneath the strike, rolling out of its reach. He cursed under his breath. The creature was too strong. He needed more time to find its weak spot. "Mara," Asher shouted, looking toward his teammate. "Any ideas?" Mara didn't answer right away, instead circling the creature, looking for an opening. Finally, her voice came through the comms. "There's a glowing core beneath its chest. It's pulsing like the center of the energy field. If we can hit it, we can destabilize it." The core. It made sense. The creature's energy field was its lifeblood, and if they could destroy the source, it would be vulnerable. "I'm going in," Asher said, determination setting in. He surged forward again, this time with a different purpose. The creature roared in frustration, trying to strike him down. But Asher was faster, more focused. He darted beneath the creature's massive claws, leaping up to the side of its body, using the creature's momentum against it. He saw it then, beneath the thick layers of its chitinous armor. The faint glow of the core. It pulsed with unnatural energy, and Asher could feel its power radiating outward. The weak point, the source. He didn't hesitate. With a powerful leap, Asher thrust his energy blade deep into the glowing core. A blinding flash of light erupted from the wound, and the creature shrieked in pain, its massive body shuddering with violent spasms. The shockwave of the creature's death throes slammed into the Vanguard, knocking them off their feet, but Asher held his ground, gripping his blade with all his strength. The beast's body began to collapse in on itself, its limbs twitching uncontrollably, as the energy that powered it was consumed by the destruction of the core. It was over. The creature was dead. But Asher's relief was short-lived. The victory felt hollow, for in the silence that followed, he realized something darker had been set in motion. Ilios had been playing a far deeper game. And the true danger was far from over. "We're not done yet," he muttered under his breath. Not by a long shot. The deafening silence that followed the creature's collapse seemed almost unreal, as though the entire facility had taken a breath. Asher's heartbeat pounded in his ears, but he didn't allow himself a moment to relax. The mission was far from over. He could still feel the oppressive weight of Ilios' presence, like a shadow looming over them, and he knew that they had only scratched the surface of his twisted plans. Darian and Mara slowly stood up, dusting themselves off. They exchanged a brief glance, both of them visibly exhausted, but their resolve remained unshaken. The creature was dead, but the facility was far from secure. Ilios' twisted ambitions had been put into motion, and the galaxy was teetering on the edge of destruction. "Is it over?" Darian asked, his voice tight with a mixture of disbelief and relief. "No," Asher answered sharply, scanning the room for any new threats. "This was just a distraction. Ilios has more up his sleeve. We need to find him and end this." Mara nodded, her face set in determination. "But where do we go from here? We've taken down his weapon, but he's still out there. And there are more hybrids. We haven't seen the worst of it yet." Asher exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of their situation pressing on him. Ilios' final plan was always going to be about more than just these hybrids. He's been manipulating humanity's genes, creating his own perfect soldiers. But there's something else, something bigger. He's trying to turn humanity into his vision of perfection, to force the galaxy to bend to his will. The walls hummed, and for a moment, the sound almost seemed to mock them. The facility was still alive, and Ilios was watching. Asher felt a coldness settle in his stomach. He had seen enough to know that Ilios was no ordinary man. He was something far worse, a man who had stopped at nothing to reshape humanity, even if it meant turning his own creations into weapons. "We need to find the control room," Asher said, his voice low and focused. "That's where Ilios will be. He's the only one who can shut this down." Mara and Darian nodded in unison, and without another word, the Vanguard set off again, moving swiftly through the labyrinth of corridors. They had to be careful. The deeper they went into the facility, the more dangerous it became. Ilios had surely set traps, mechanisms meant to slow them down, to wear them out. But the Vanguard weren't easily deterred. The halls seemed to stretch on endlessly, each corner hiding more horrors than the last. Deadly alien creatures, twisted experiments, and long-abandoned technologies filled the space, reminders of Ilios' twisted vision. As they passed through another corridor, a low humming noise began to grow louder, reverberating through the walls like the sound of 1,000 whispers. "Something's not right," Mara murmured, her senses heightened. Before Asher could respond, the lights flickered. A sudden surge of power coursed through the facility, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. It was a low, rumbling vibration that rattled their bones. Then came the voice, cold, mocking, a voice they had longed to hear, but never under these circumstances. "You've done well to make it this far." Ilios' voice echoed throughout the facility, its source unknown but omnipresent. "But you've underestimated me. You think this is the end. You think you've won." The walls seemed to close in on them, and for the first time, Asher felt the creeping sense of something truly sinister. It wasn't just the facility they had to fight against. It was Ilios himself, his mind controlling everything. "You see, you're too late," Ilios continued. "My Warborn will rise again, stronger than ever before. They are not just soldiers. They are the future of humanity. And you, Asher Kane, are the final piece of the puzzle. You were always meant to lead them. But now you've chosen to fight against your true purpose. How predictable." The words cut through Asher like a blade. His chest tightened as he realized the truth in Ilios's words. The Warborn lords had been his legacy, his perfect soldiers. And now, Ilios was calling on them to fulfill his vision. The Vanguard were nothing more than obstacles standing in the way of his ascension. "No," Asher growled, his fist clenching around the hilt of his energy blade. "This ends now." The humming sound grew louder, the vibration beneath their feet intensifying. The walls suddenly parted, revealing a massive chamber ahead, a room filled with machinery, holographic screens flashing data that no one could comprehend. At the center of the room, a large cylindrical tank pulsed with a sickly light, its contents moving in the liquid like something alive. "Welcome to the heart of my creation," Ilios's voice echoed one last time. "This is where humanity's true potential will be realized. This is where the Warborn rise again. And you will be the first to see them take their rightful place at the top of the galaxy." Asher stepped forward, his heart racing with fury and determination. This was it, the final battle, the moment he would confront Ilios and end the Warborn lord's twisted legacy for good. With a fierce roar, Asher led the charge, the Vanguard following close behind. They wouldn't stop. They couldn't. Not when the fate of humanity was on the line. The chamber was vast, the walls lined with machinery that hummed with the steady pulse of energy. At its center, the large cylindrical tank glowed with an unnatural light, casting an eerie blue hue across the room. Inside the tank, something stirred. Asher's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight. Bodies suspended in liquid, the Warborn lords, their twisted forms slowly coming to life, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly intelligence. Ilios's dream was becoming reality, and they were watching it unfold before them. Asher's heart hammered in his chest. This was the final battleground. He could feel the weight of Ilios's presence, like an oppressive force hanging in the air. The battle wasn't just about stopping a madman. It was about saving humanity from being twisted into something unrecognizable. "Darian, Mara, stay alert," Asher said, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "Ilios will be here soon. We need to shut this down before those things wake up fully." Mara nodded, her blade humming to life in her hands. "We stop him now, Asher. No more running." The air seemed to thicken as the ground rumbled beneath their feet. The tank began to emit a low, vibrating hum, the liquid inside churning violently. The Warborn lords inside it began to twitch, their eyes opening slowly, the glow deepening with each passing second. They were coming to life. Then a laugh echoed through the chamber, low and chilling. Ilios's voice filled the room, mocking and confident, like a man who knew he had already won. "You're too late, Asher," Ilios's voice reverberated, coming from all directions. "This is the dawn of the Warborn era. Humanity will bend to my will, and you will be nothing more than a footnote in history." The ground shook harder, and the tank's contents started to shift, the Warborn lords slowly rising, their massive, muscular forms breaking free from their liquid prisons. Their bodies were enhanced beyond anything Asher had ever seen, a mix of human ingenuity and monstrous power. They moved like living weapons, their eyes locked on the Vanguard. Asher stepped forward, his energy blade crackling with fierce resolve. "I don't care what you've created, Ilios. This ends here. We will stop you." Darian raised his blaster, taking aim at the closest Warborn. "We'll see about that." The Warborn lords moved with unnerving coordination, their eyes filled with a predatory gleam. But despite their power, the Vanguard weren't afraid. They had fought too long, too hard to let these abominations define humanity's future. Asher tightened his grip on his blade, ready for the final confrontation. Attack! Asher yelled, charging toward the nearest Warborn lord. The clash was immediate. Asher's blade collided with the Warborn's enhanced armor, sparks flying. He gritted his teeth as he pushed against the creature's strength, his energy blade sinking deep into its shoulder. The creature roared in pain, but Asher didn't let up. Every strike he made was with the intention of ending this nightmare once and for all. Mara darted around another Warborn, her energy blade flashing as she expertly dodged a massive claw swipe. She slashed upward, severing the creature's arm with a single fluid motion. The Warborn stumbled back, momentarily stunned, but it quickly recovered, charging at her with terrifying speed. Darian's blaster roared, sending a barrage of energy shots into the mass of Warborn, but the creature's enhanced physiology absorbed much of the damage. The sheer force of their attacks was overwhelming, but the Vanguard fought with everything they had, refusing to back down. But just as they seemed to gain ground, the ground trembled once more. Ilios's laughter filled the chamber, and a massive holographic image of him appeared in the center of the room. His face twisted in sickening amusement. "You truly believe you can stop this? These creations are unstoppable. You're nothing but insects beneath my feet. The Warborn are my perfect soldiers, and together they will bring the galaxy to its knees." Asher's eyes narrowed as the image of Ilios flickered. He knew that the only way to stop this was to destroy the source, Ilios himself. But to do that, they needed to take down the Warborn lords and shut down the machinery that powered them. "Focus on the tank," Asher shouted. "That's where his control is coming from." Mora, understanding instantly, leaped into action. She darted toward the tank, her blade flashing as she cut through the cables that held the machinery in place. Sparks flew, and the hum of the tank's energy intensified, but it didn't stop. The Warborn lords weren't finished yet. They kept coming, one after another, their monstrous forms charging toward the Vanguard with relentless fury. Asher fought harder, his blade moving faster, cutting through the Warborn with brutal precision. He could see the tank's energy levels beginning to fluctuate. They were getting closer, just a little longer. He wasn't going to let Ilios win. With a roar of defiance, Asher threw himself into the fray, pushing through the oncoming onslaught of Warborn. He reached the tank, his blade slicing through the last of the cables. The room exploded with light, and the tank began to break down, its power source flickering and sputtering. Ilios's voice cracked with fury, but it was too late. The Warborn lords were no longer under his control. The chamber began to collapse as the energy that powered it collapsed into chaos. The Vanguard had won. But as the facility crumbled around them, Asher knew one thing for certain. The fight for humanity's future had only just begun. The galaxy was still at war, and the Warborn lords were out there, their legacy far from over. But for now, the Vanguard had stopped Ilios, and that was enough. For now, humanity had a future, and they would fight for it.